today to do my wrap up for everything that I read in the month of August. So, for the entire month, I read 14 books. The first two books I read were actually two rereads, and they were audiobooks. I started off the month with a couple days worth of migraines that were extremely annoying, and I basically could do nothing after I got out of work other than just kind of lie there in misery. So I ended up listening to a couple of audiobooks. The first of which was The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie. In that book, the body of a young woman is found in the library of the Mr. and Mrs. Bantry's home in a small English village. To escape the rumors, the couple ask for the help of their friend, the little old Miss Marple, the amateur detective. So this was, as I said, a reread. It is a good twisty-turny mystery. It has interesting characters. It is also a nice play on the whole trope of, a body being found in the library, like Professor Plum in the library with a candlestick, like shit like that. It's a good play on that trope. I really love Miss Marple and the wise and sometimes cynical things that come out of her mouth, while at the same time she's just looking like this tiny, sweet old granny. It's pretty great. But, yep, I enjoyed the reread, and I gave it 5 stars. And the next audiobook was also an Agatha Christie, and this one was Hickory Dickory Dock. Now, I believe that I have read this before, because I did remember some details about it, but I guess it's been so long that I did not remember who the killer was or how it ended at all, which was kind of nice, because I was surprised. But anyway, Hercule Poirot's reliable secretary, Miss Lemon, ends up making mistakes in some of his letters that he dictated to her, and that was very peculiar. And so that started a twisty-turny mystery into a case of kleptomania at a student hostel that Poirot and his little gray cells suspect is something much more sinister. I absolutely love Poirot. He is hands down my all-time favorite detective. He's brilliant, he's inquisitive, he asks these really, sometimes very strange questions, but it all ends up making sense at the end, as he just kind of pieces things together. But I also really like the little intricate details that are honestly in Agatha Christie's works, but especially in this one, just going into the little secrets that people keep, the little weird quirks and tics about them. I also really love when mysteries take place mostly in like one setting, especially when it's in like a whodunit in like a big house or something, and they have to like pick who the killer is out of like just everyone who was there at the time. Like I love those. But yeah, this had intricate details and clues. Everything, of course, makes sense at the end. It was a brilliant mystery, a really good read. I enjoyed it a lot. The audiobook I listened to of it also was fantastic. And I really enjoyed it. If I can remember who it was by, I'll try to put it in the description box down below. So, but yeah, I had a good time reading it, and I gave it 5 stars. And the third book that I read in August was Once Ghosted, Twice Shy by Alyssa Cole. This is Reluctant Royals 2.5. It takes place I think around the time of A Duke by Default. It's definitely like a few months after the events in A Princess in Theory, which is several months ago, Lakotsi, who is the assistant to His Royal Highness, bringer of light and love, Prince Thabiso Mashushu of Thesolo. Lakotsi had her heart broken by Fabiola C. in New York City. But a chance encounter has them ending up spending the day together. And the question is, can Lakotsi allow Fab back into her life? And what was the reason Fab broke things off in the first place? This was absolutely adorable. I was so happy to see Lakotsi get her love story. I really loved her character from the Reluctant Royal series. Fab was also really cool as well. Like I said, this was adorable. There are some steamy bits in here. It was funny. Also a very quirky look at New York City. There are a couple of sightseeing spots that they went to that I meant to look up and see if they actually exist, but I kind of forgot. But if they are real, that's pretty cool. I enjoy that, because you don't really hear about that kind of stuff when you think about New York. You think about Broadway and the I almost said the Eiffel Tower. Wow, the Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, Ellis Island. What else is in New York? Rockefeller Center. Shit like that. You think about that kind of stuff. You don't necessarily think about these kind of like interesting little spots that maybe not everybody knows about in New York. I don't know. I appreciated that. Also, timely topics again, as part of the plot in here, which I really appreciate. And this is actually told in time shifts, between when they first met and were together, and then from the present of when they see each other again. I thought that was very well done, and I really enjoyed how their relationship was shown evolving through those time shifts. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this story, and the only thing I was sad about was that it was so short. But I mean, it was just, you didn't really need a chunky story for it, but like I just wanted more because I wanted to see more of the characters. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. And the next book I read was also an audiobook, and it was also a reread. I kind of started it when I was having migraines, and then I eventually finished it while I was working on an art project. And this was A Murder is Announced by Agatha Christie, and this again involves Miss Marple, and this one is definitely one of my favorites. An announcement in the village newspaper of Chipping Cleghorn states that a murder is to take place at 6:30 on the dot at Little Paddock's house. Everyone in the village kind of thinks this like a game or a hoax, until a murder does actually occur. Like I said, Miss Marple appears again to solve the who and why. This, like I said, it's one of my favorites. There's really clever small town commentary. It's a brilliant mystery, and of course it has the lovely Miss Marple. It also features some actually very competent detectives, extremely nosy neighbors, which are also kind of funny, and poses an interesting question about whether or not you really do know your neighbors, like whether you do know the people that you live around, which is also a scary thing to consider as well, I guess, maybe. There was one question that kind of happened in the book that was left unanswered, and so that was a little bit of a bummer. I'm going to have to look at like my physical copy of it at some point, just because like I don't remember that question being like a thing before, so I don't know if I just missed it somehow in like the audiobook, or if it was just something that I didn't notice before because I was so caught up in the main mystery. But yeah, I'll have to look into that more. But like I said, I still enjoyed this, and I gave it 5 stars. And the next book that I read was Becoming by Michelle Obama. This, of course, is the memoir of her life from childhood to her schooling, marriage, and kids to the White House. Always on the journey of becoming. This was inspirational. There are like really beautiful quotes throughout here and really nice bits of wisdom sprinkled throughout the book. I was really good to get some more insight into Michelle Obama's life, because while I do know some things about President Obama, just because, I mean, he was president, and also just a little bit, like, I've had his book Dreams My Father summarized for me, like, but I have it, I just haven't read it yet. So I knew some details about him, but I knew like next to nothing about Michelle Obama at all, so this was just really wonderful to know more about her. Also, like I said, I'm a nosy bitch. I love memoirs. I like to know more about people and what makes them tick. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this. It did have, especially later on in the book, once they had made it to the White House, there were a lot of events and things that were brought up that I either had forgotten entirely about or I had never heard of before, which was kind of weird to me, I guess, because I thought I was pretty with it at the time, and I guess I really wasn't, because I was just so caught up at school, I guess, and in like projects and social crap and everything else. I guess I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in the world or in the country politically at all. So that was also kind of interesting to take a look at some of those things as well. And I do have to say that the last like quarter of the book, actually throughout the book, I kind of cried a little bit, but definitely through that last quarter, just because there were so many hopeful plans and such a positive outlook a lot of the times on things, and it was just very rough to kind of see that and then know that here we are in a dumpster fire. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because otherwise I'm gonna go off on a political rant and it's not gonna be good. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it. I would suggest that everyone reads it. And the next book I read was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Xiomara is dealing with being a teenage girl growing up in Harlem, dealing with normal like teenage high school struggles, as well as questioning her faith that she's been brought up with, and the overzealousness of her mother. And it is told entirely in verse, which was actually a new thing for me. I don't think that I have really read a book that's entirely written in verse before. I won't count like epic poems, because those are kind of more different, because they're not really meant to be a novelization. It's just like an oral poem but put into a book. But this is just a book written in verse. I loved it. I get the hype, like totally. I understand now why this is so good, because this was such an enjoyable read. It just flowed beautifully. I enjoyed myself immensely. I have to look up Elizabeth Acevedo's videos, if there are videos of her anywhere from the poetry slams, because she is a wonderful poet. yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this. Yeah, I had a wonderful time reading it. And I know that, like, I'm I'm an adult. I have not been a teenager for a while now. And I grew up in, like, the most rural Vermont. Like, I have never lived in a city at all. I'm the whitest of white bread. But, like, I related so much to some of the struggles that Zio Mara was going through. Just, you know, I at least kind of remember what it's like to be at that age and just kind of write. Like, you have to get the shit out. And you're so desperate to, like, express yourself and use your voice, and so desperate to have someone fucking hear you. And it's just, I don't know, it gave me all kinds of feelings. And I also kind of really understood questioning things and being frustrated and upset and angry when you try to question things and people don't answer your questions or dismiss them or tell them that you're the one who's bad or wrong in some way. And it's just, I don't know, this just, like I said, it just gave me all kinds of feelings. I really loved this. Like, I really, really loved this. I think this is my favorite book that I read this month. And I just, yeah, I get it now. I get books in verse. I'm gonna seek out more of them. If anyone has any recommendations on other books that are written in verse, please let me know. Because I want to know more. And I already have, I think it's Clap When You Land. Yes, I already have one of our other books, Clap When You Land, on my big, like, Goodreads TBR, but I'm probably going to bump it up to, like, the next book that I seek out when I let myself buy books again, because I already wanted to read it, but after finishing this and loving it so much, now it's, like, bumped up even further, and I definitely need to read this. So, yeah, this is wonderful. I gave it 5 stars. And the next book that I read was Dead Voices by Catherine Arden. This is book 2 in the Small Spaces series. I think that's what she's calling the quintet. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, Ollie and her friends Coco and Brian are back again. This time they are headed to a lodge on a ski trip with their parents. And when the lodge gets snowed in, and the kids kind of learn the true nature of the ski lodge, things get kind of spooky. I also really loved this book. It didn't quite pack the emotional punch that Small Spaces had, for me at least, but I still really enjoyed it. It's very heartwarming. Again, characters are quirky and fun. Really still talking about, like, grief and friendship and love, and it's such a, I don't know, I'm really loving this series. There's something in here that this had was a point of view change. Now, the first book was entirely in Ollie's point of view. This one was split between Ollie and Coco, which leaves me kind of hopeful that we'll see some of Brian and things from his point of view in the next book. Because I really loved the addition of hearing from Coco and getting more insight into her character. Yeah, I really love this. There seemed to be, I think, an homage to The Shining in here, which I possibly could be wrong about. But I'm, like, 95% certain that it was an homage to The Shining, and I think there were some other homages to other horror books in here as well, which I appreciated. And I do have to say, so I know that this is middle grade, so this is like geared at like what, 8 to 12-year-olds, I guess. The last half of this book scared the shit out of me, mostly because it's dealing with something that is like an irrational fear of mine, so it spooked the hell out of me. I don't know if it would spook the hell out of everyone, but if you're a little freaked out by an aspect of this, maybe you'll also get spooked too. I don't know. It was a good time. I gave it 5 stars. And the next book I read was Longbourn by Joe Baker. This is Pride and Prejudice, but told from the point of view of the Below Stairs staff. Or rather, this story is focusing entirely on the Below Stairs staff, which consists of Mrs. Hill, the housekeeper, her husband, who is, I think, technically the butler or groundskeeper, something like that, and then the 2 maid servants and a footman who has just arrived, with a heavy focus on one of the maid servants whose name is Sarah. Pride and Prejudice is going on in most of this book. It's just kind of in the background, which is nice. We're focusing on other people. I do have to say that there are some details in here that might be hard for some folks. There is some allusions and then also direct addressing of assault, pedophilia, child assault, death, rape, some war scenes that are not really pleasant, that I also kind of wasn't expecting and didn't really sign up for, but okay. But yeah, so that's in here. Things are very described, so if this is troublesome to you, just so you know, it is a very period piece. So we get kind of the nitty-gritty side of life at the time. I do like that it shows the day-to-day life of the more common folk, I guess, in the time periods, like Regency technically, right? I'm so bad with those time periods, but I think it's technically Regency period. And I liked that kind of day-to-day thing. I liked getting a look at how did they clean this shit, how did this work in the house and everything, because in Pride and Prejudice it's just kind of like as if magic little elves deliver everything and things appear and people get dressed and people do this thing and whatnot. And it's like in this you get to see how the shoe roses got to the girls even though the weather was bad, and you know, how all of these meals got on the table even though everybody seemed to be busy or doing friggin' nothing, and all of this stuff. So that was also interesting. And I know that, like, this does color the Bennets, Bingley, Darcy, and even Mr. Collins in a different light than, of course, Pride and Prejudice does. At the same time, they're not, like, truly horrible people. I mean, there's a couple of things that are alluded to, especially with like Bingley and Darcy, that are not great, but everybody doesn't seem to be like directly horrid except for Wickham. Wickham is always horrid and reprehensible, and he is just the worst. He is much worse in here. I fucking hate his guts. Like I said, they're not the other characters, even though they're in a different light than they are, of course, when they're like the main characters in Pride and Prejudice. It's not that they're really horrible, it's just that they're ignorant. I think that's like the main thing for them, is they're just really fucking ignorant. They're ignorant that they and their servants have equal rights, because of course in this time period they really didn't, but They're ignorant that their staff have hopes and dreams and desires and wants and needs that are beyond them, that they have the right to those hopes and desires and dreams just as much as they have the right to that shit. They're also really ignorant of how much they inconvenience the people around them, and they're just really ignorant. So yeah, I saw some reviews of this that people who love Pride and Prejudice were extremely upset about the way the Bennets were described in this book. It bothered me a little at first, but the more I got into the story, I kind of understood. It's like, it's not that they're really bad people because they have moments of kindness or what they think is kindness. It's just that because of the privileges that they had at the time, because of their wealth, their status, their societal expectations of how things are supposed to be done at the time, it put them in a place of ignorance. And they're not about to move past that ignorance at all. Just because it's not what society dictated them to do. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to do some future reading of these books with a slightly different eye and try to take in more details about the people that aren't really mentioned that much in the moving around in the background. But at the same time, it's like I said, they're not terrible, they're just ignorant. But I did enjoy the read. I did enjoy that someone, Joe Baker, thought more about what these people's lives would be like, because I certainly never thought anything about any of the background characters in Pride. I don't know how many of you might have thought about the background characters in Pride, but I'm glad Joe Baker thought about them and decided to tell their story. So, yeah. I would say that it wasn't a fully enjoyable read just because of some of the contents, but I did enjoy parts of it, and I did like the fact that we got more insight into normal people's lives at this time period, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the last books that I read were volumes 7 through 12 of Fruits Basket. These are the collector's editions. So my husband got these for me for our anniversary. So I ended up binge reading these instead of reading any of the other things that I meant to finish off the month with. And it gave me lots of feels, of course. So this is like the last half of the story, but this is the tale of teenage orphan Toru Honda and the mysterious Soma family that she comes to know. I absolutely adore this series. I was so happy that they came out with like these special editions that are really pretty, that have like these really beautiful covers and close-ups of the characters, and see, there's Toru, and they have like these really nice color photos in here. I just love that. But yeah, I really enjoyed re-experiencing this series. I had a lot of fun and a lot of feels re-experiencing it. There were some parts through this last section that I had completely forgotten about, just because it's been so long since the first time I read this series. I think back when I was in high school, maybe college, I don't know. But I watched the anime more recently than that, and the anime kind of ends not in this half, it's like before the events in these books take place. So yeah, there's a lot that kind of happens in the last half that I didn't really remember a lot of details about. So it was nice to kind of get a refresher on that. There are definitely characters in here that I will never forgive because of actions that they took, but I think I'm less angry about how some things ended than I was back when I first read it. This is kind of an older series as well, but other than the fact that DVDs are like brand new and so are cell phones with cameras in them, were also kind of like a new gadget at the time. Other than that, this is aged fairly well. I do have to say that there is like a detail, namely relationships, romantic relationships between a couple of characters, that where there's like an age gap, and that is on the verge of kind of creepy and problematic. But I mean, it's kind of problematic anyway, but especially if it's taken out of context. I guess this probably bothered me less when I was younger, even though at the time when I was first reading this as a teenager, I don't know. I guess you kind of see things differently as a teenager. Sometimes you kind of think that age differences don't matter, but then as you get a little older and you look back on grown ass people with teenagers, it makes you really uncomfortable, and for good reason. But I don't know. This is like I said, it's an older series. It's also in Japan. I think like the age of consent's slightly different there. Don't quote me on that because I don't know like nothing about laws in Japan really at all. So yeah, it is weird, but it's also, you have to think about where it is, the time period, and also the fact that this is like shoujo. Shoujo manga's like, you know, geared towards a very specific set of people, and it's like happy, well, not always happy, but it's like love, happy stuff. High school loves are forever, and we don't care about age gaps and shit like that. I don't really know how to explain it to you, but yeah. So it's still a little icky, which is something to reflect upon now as an adult. But other than like that, series is just still holds up pretty well. I guess in conclusion of this, Yuki Soma was, and always shall be a prince, especially to me. And somehow I still love Shiguri, that fucking bastard. So yeah, I gave all of these 5 stars, probably mostly for nostalgia reasons, but also it's it's got some feels in it as well. But yeah, that does it for my books from August. I can hardly believe that it is now September. That's kind of crazy. Like I said, I really don't know how my reading is gonna go this month. I guess we're going to find out and see how many books I actually get to at all. But yeah, I hope that you all have been successful in reaching your reading